This week on Better Bad Ideas, we sit down with Casey Affleck, where we talk about growing up in neighborhoods in Boston, we talk about acting, we talk about technology, we talk about the recent SAG strike, and most importantly, we talk about education. I really think you're going to enjoy this episode. Let's get into it. I'm Sean O'Brien, General President of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters.
Put your helmets on, buckle your chin straps. It's a full contact sport.
We're going to find out who has a better bad idea.
So great. I appreciate you being here. I know you're out there doing great work on behalf of this terrible tragedy that's out in California, but it's important, and I really appreciate you being on this show. Being from Boston, which we both are, and some will debate whether Medford and Cambridge are actually Boston, but they are large cities. So what's it like being Casey Affleck in Cambridge growing up?
Growing up, it was a great place to grow up. I really feel pretty lucky to have grown up there. When I think back on my childhood, it was like I don't remember a lot of grown-ups being around. Like I don't have a lot of memories of my parents when I was little. You know, it was kind of like the city. We were out in the city. You know, times were a little bit different then, and that place was different. So, like kids are just from a very early age, they're out roaming around and on their own, and that was a good place to be roaming around. I mean, it was a working class city, and it was, but it was people from all over. You had families that had been in the same house for 4 generations, and then you had families that had, 8 of them that had just come to the country that generation. So it was a great mix of people, and it's just I do feel like I was raised by that community, as much as my family, and for better or for worse, but I'm proud of it.
Yeah, so I grew up in Medford. I grew up in the same neighborhood, probably not too far from where you are. I was over near Tufts University, Boston Ave. My family's originally from Charlestown, so we made that huge leap, 1 mile to Medford, and but we grew up in a neighborhood, the same thing. I don't remember a lot of oversight by our parents, and I remember leaving in the morning, and you'd probably have lunch at one of your buddies' houses. Grilled cheese maybe came from the church or something, but we always had to be home when the street lights come on. We didn't want to be in our houses. And growing up, I think, in Cambridge and Medford, we learned a lot of lessons out on the street because you weren't just hanging around with one demographic or your peer group. I remember growing up in my neighborhood, we were out at 5 years old, and on the other corner could be 18 or 19-year-olds and everybody in between. And I think that helps shape our lives. And I notice you growing up in Cambridge, which was a pretty liberal, progressive city. What are some of the lessons you learned just by being in the neighborhood, being on the street?
I think you learn that you can kind of get along with anyone. That you come up against people all the time that other kids don't even speak the same language. English wasn't the first language at home. They look different, they sound different, they have different backgrounds, different ideas, different values at home, and none of that mattered. Those were my best friends. I remember. So what's the lesson there? There's a lot to be gained from seeing past those differences and making connections with people, and it's not something that anyone ever said to me explicitly until I got to. You get to high school, and I went to the public high school, Cambridge, Rindge, and Latin, and that was a pretty good public school. I mean, there's 3,000 kids, and there's it wasn't as controlled as schools are now. There's a lot going on that grown-ups aren't aware of, but we got a pretty good education, and part of that education was I think passing on some of those values of that community. Which now it's funny, a lot of those values have become more accepted in our culture in the country, or they're at least talked about a lot more, argued about. They've become sort of divisive in some ways. These ideas about DEI and stuff like that, and they become sort of inflammatory issues. But then those are ideas that, Cambridge was kind of the cradle of political correctness, and in some ways, and in this country, and for better or for worse. But back then, those were new ideas, and and they were different than things that I was hearing everywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cambridge, growing up in Medford, you had Medford, you had Cambridge, Somerville, Medford, Everett, Chelsea. And you look at where Cambridge was, where you grew up, in the era that we grew up, because we're pretty much the same age. Cambridge was far ahead of, the diversity than most other surrounding cities. But to your point, I mean, I went to public high school, Medford High School, and I always tell people it was like training day. You're walking into a high school. We had metal detectors.
Yeah.
It was a very diverse high school, but there was never any racial divide or any conflict. You just went to school with, whoever was there, and you were friends with whoever was there. There was no talk about, this person's, from Colombia, this person's from Haiti or anything else. So everybody was the same. And the best thing about going to a public high school was sports. We played a lot of sports. And that's where you actually, got to appreciate people that weren't like you or that didn't grow up like you, that maybe came from another country. And I know Cambridge Ridge and Latin was a very diverse high school. What was it like going to Cambridge Ridge and Latin, walking in there as freshman year? Because I remember walking into Medford High, I was scared. To be honest with you, I was intimidated because you heard horror stories, but once you get in there, you find your way and navigate through. And I think that's a different culture than our kids experienced. We kind of made it a lot easier for them. We were more involved because, there's more opportunity. Both our parents had to work. What is your feelings on your high school experience?
Yeah, I mean, again, I really am grateful that I got that experience. I mean, it was some of my best friends to this day are guys friends I made in high school, and yeah, it was a little bit, anytime you're a freshman, I was like 5'1" when I was a freshman. You know what I mean? That was scary. That was a school with a lot of kids, and could be kind of a rough school, and it was so you had to learn how to keep your mouth shut, keep your head down a little bit, find your way through it. And that's a good lesson too, and it's okay that it's great that schools have gotten a little bit different. There aren't any, my kids are in high school, have gone through high school, public school here in LA, pretty tough school. And, but I would say are there fights happen? Do the police come to the school? There's never any stabbings and things that happened at my high school. It doesn't happen here.
Right.
And LA USD is not a great public school system. There's a lot of room for improvement here. And still, I think they're experiencing a lot less of some of the stuff that we experience. And that's good. There's other ways to learn some tough lessons and develop grit than having to be beat up in high school, So
yeah, I know.
I loved it. And it was really, really diverse. There were a lot of languages that you would hear in the halls, and just also people coming to school from different kind of homes, that's a big deal, because some of these schools, I see now, I've had my kids, they're almost out of the house. And, so I've been through a lot of different schools, and there's a lot of a good effort made to make sure that those schools have a diverse student body. But very often they come from homes that all have the same values. And it was nice that when you and I think went to school, there were kids that really came from households where there were different things being said, different value systems. And so you start to interact with those in a sort of age appropriate way. And all of that is stuff that I feel prepared me for the world a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you get a whole view of different scenarios, different upbringings within the same community, which I think there's not a whole lot of that anymore. Like my neighborhood, probably like yours, there were friends of mine that their father may have been in Vietnam, so that's a different animal to deal with. Then you have the universities where you live. You've got a big population of world-renowned universities and colleges where you may be living next to someone whose dad went to Harvard or their mother teaches at Harvard, whatever that is. But the one thing that I think growing up in the neighborhoods that we grew up that has helped us, I think, and it's missing, is that you had a lot of respect for your neighbors. You had a lot of respect for the police. You had a lot of respect for your community, and I think some of that's missing now. Do you agree with that or no?
Totally. especially out here. I mean, it's different. I go back to Cambridge a few times a year, and it's changed a lot.
People's Republic, right?
Yeah, and the biggest change, and it's about what you're talking about, the community that's there, and people. It's not families that have been there for a long time. These are now it's mostly people that come in for a few years, or they're working at the university, they're going to school, or it feels really different. And in high school, there was a lot of talk about rent control. They were getting rid of rent control, and I didn't quite understand why everyone was so up in arms about it. And then they did get rid of it. They managed to get rid of rent control, and nothing's really seemed to change. And then, like 5 years, 10 years after that, suddenly the whole landscape of the city did change really quickly.
Well, the problem is we can't afford, or a lot of our peers, our friends, can't afford to live where we grew up.
Yeah.
Because it's just become such, a crisis with housing. Like people that I grew up with that still live where I grew up, they may have actually had the ability to buy their family home at a lower price. But, the problem too, I think, is that a lot of people aren't from where, can't afford to live where they're from.
Yeah. Yeah. It's too bad. And it changes the experience that you have as a kid, and your kids are growing up there now. And, I don't see that same thing we were talking about, kids kind of roaming around in the community. I mean, when I was a kid, I was 5 years old, and I was at someone else's house. I mean, 5, you're like that. You're right. I don't know the last time you saw a 5-year-old, but, so I jumped out of I wanted to catch a clothesline. So I jumped off the porch. I thought I could reach it and grab it. We were no one was watching us. Me and my friend. I missed it, and I fell down about, a story on my arm. I broke my arm. The bone came out of my arm. Broke it here, broke it up here. I mean, it was a huge bloody mess. And I just walked home.
There was no sympathy, though. But listen, I will say this. I guarantee you when you walked home, there was no sympathy. You got yelled at for breaking your arm.
You know what? Even more, there was no one home. You know what I mean? There was no one there. Yeah. So I'm walking home, and someone hears me screaming and crying or something, and they know who I am, a couple blocks away, some other adult, some woman, and she's like, "What happened to you?" And I broke my arm. She's like, "I gotta get in the car." Then we go to the hospital, takes me to the hospital. That's unlikely. I don't know, if you know every 5-year-old in your neighborhood, but I mean, if you see a 5-year-old walking down the street with a bone sticking out, you're gonna help out.
Sure.
But she knew exactly who I was, told my mom, took me to the hospital. When I tell people that story, they say, "I got this huge scar," and they're like, "Hey, what happened in your arm?" I tell them a story. I was jumped off a thing. I was walking home, and some lady found me, and they just can't, every part of it they can't understand. They're like, "Why were you alone at 5 at someone's house?
That's the way it was.
Why were you jumping out of a window at 5? You know what I mean? Like, that's the way it was.
Well, there were no video games to speak of. There was no distractions which kept you in your house. And I know in my house, and, my mother is probably one of the most strongest people in the world. And my father was a, provider. He worked very hard, a good man. But when he was home, you didn't want to be there because you didn't want to poke the bear. Mm-hmm. So as fast as you could get out of that house, you got out of there, and you came home when you had to be. But I think you make a great point. There wasn't a whole lot of adult supervision hands-on, but there was a lot of people that watched out for you in those neighborhoods that you weren't aware that were watching out for you.
Yeah.
I mean, which is a different scenario now. If you see a 5-year-old kid out there on his own, something bad happened or something bad's about to happen. And I think that's the beauty that we recognized growing up the way we grew up, was that, you always knew someone was looking out for you. Times have changed, and that's what's a little scary now. But let's talk about, how did you get into acting at such a young age? I mean, you were doing commercials and everything else. I mean, did you wake up one day and say, "Hey, I want to be an actor," or was it just something that you did?
I was always a little bit of a character, and mischievous a bit, and sort of bit of a class clown, and I got into a lot of trouble that way. And I'm not sure what that has to do with it exactly, but I think it's a part of it. Like, there was some part of my personality that wanted to perform in that specific kind of way. And acting is a bit like that. You have to be, it's provocative, you're trying to surprise yourself with your own behavior and surprise other people you're working with. So But more practically, my mom's best friend in Cambridge, she was a local casting director, and she was a really, really great woman, Patty Collins, and she would bring me, and she kind of would look out for us a lot. My mom was a teacher. She worked. My dad wasn't around, and so very often she was looking after us, and so that meant taking us to work with her sometimes, which meant going to, casting and stuff. And she would just give us jobs as extras.
So she didn't just look at you guys and say, "You're stunningly handsome."
That came later. Came later, yeah. And she would just throw us in as like, anytime a job came to town, we would be extras. So any movie that's shot in Boston from like 1980 to 1993, you can spot me, somewhere like running around in the background. And
so we get a lot in common,
What's that?
Did you ever hear of the movie The Brinks Job?
Uh-huh.
I was an extra in that movie.
Oh, yeah?
5 years old. I can tell you the exact scene.
Have you seen it?
I've seen it,
you
yeah.
Can spot yourself?
Of course I can. I was a scene where Peter Falk was wiping a car down in front of a bar or whatever, and we're walking with my younger brother and myself are walking. I was like 5. I was 6 years old. My younger brother was 5, and we're walking holding hands. It's the middle of summer. We're dressed like winter, and we're walking by. So that was, I'm kind of a Hollywood actor myself.
It's kind of a short career, though.
Well, I do have a face for radio, my friend.
That's funny. Well, anyway, that's so. I guess we had a similar start. That's how we got going. And then I was like, this is pretty good. I was playing baseball, and I wanted to. That was my dream. I was going to play baseball, but I got to high school, and I was sitting on the bench most of the time. And after my freshman year, they asked me to come. I had taken a drama class, and they said, "Don't play baseball this summer. Come do the musical." I couldn't sing, but it sounded like fun. More fun than like being on the travel ball team and never playing. So I went and did that, and I found out that I was completely tone deaf, but I was the only guy in the cast, and it was this like romantic musical, so they had to cast me.
Were you there like specifically to pick up chicks?
I wasn't thinking that way, I don't think. I was just thinking like, let me find one thing I'm good at in this world, and it wasn't going to be like pitching for the Sox. So I found the place where it was the equivalent of like being on a baseball team and you're the only guy with arms. I was the only guy that a guy in that cast, and so they had to give me a part, and I kind of liked it. And then I just kept doing it, and we sort of went from there. And then after high school, I thought, let me try this.
Yeah, so I read an article about a teacher that was pretty influential in your life that, basically, kind of guided you through acting and everything else. And his name was
Jerry Spector.
Jerry Spector. Is he still alive?
Yeah.
Is he? Did you talk to him a lot?
No. I love him, though. I don't talk to him a lot. He retired eventually, right. And he's got to be, 70 years old maybe. So he really was a fantastic teacher. And he's one of 3 teachers I remember in my whole 4 years of being in high school. And, you get somebody like that, and it really it gives a kid something to do. Something, he gave us the tools to succeed. And he also, I think, instilled some self-esteem in all the kids that he had, because he made us work really hard. Mm-hmm. And he treated us with respect, but also not like kids. And
he probably taught you life lessons that you didn't even realize you were learning at that point in time.
Yeah, like he did. And he was good at what he did. There's a New England Drama Festival. We thought it was the biggest thing in the world, but it was these high schools competing against each other. Right. And we all write our own plays and perform them. This guy is like the Bill Belichick of like high school drama teachers. He won every single time.
How are his press conferences?
That's funny. Yeah. So I was lucky to have him, and I wish there were more teachers like that. My mom was a teacher, and I thought a lot about like maybe being a teacher myself.
It's a tough job.
It's a tough job.
People don't realize how tough it is.
I mean, why don't they? Everybody had teachers, You know what I mean? Everyone can reflect on how hard it must have been in that classroom that they were in.
But I think it gets back to, again, we talk about respect. You know, we were always brought up to respect police officers, teachers, and people that were providing services to the community. And, you know, it doesn't seem like those values exist anymore. I know in Boston, you know, teachers have a very difficult time. You know, they're dealing with, and again, it's, you know, it's a different time, like where people can say and do whatever they want without consequences. And I think that happens in schools as well. So it makes teachers' jobs very difficult. And I think the lessons that we learned going to school and the respect that we have, I don't think it's there anymore like it was.
Yeah, you might be right. I tell you though, like this country, I didn't hear education talked a lot about in this last election or the one before that. We're rated 27th in the world. Our education. I mean, what is wrong? Why is no one paying attention to that? And what kind of future do you think we're going to have if we just keep giving generation after generation a worse education than their parents had?
Well, I think we got to get back to basics. I think sometimes in education, again, it's an unqualified opinion from myself, but you grew up with an educator. I think based upon what we've seen and witnessed, a lot of times, you know, especially in like not so much in the high school level, but colleges and universities, you know, the people that are going to college and universities now, they're not being taught. They're actually listened to an opinion. And that opinion's kind of being forced on people in a certain way, where I think we've got to do a reset like everything else. And look, let's educate, let's get an education, and let's figure out on our own what we want to do, whether it's influenced or non-influenced by someone. I mean, look, I was influenced by people in my life that actually the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, but they didn't force me into what I'm doing. They didn't force me into the opinion what I'm doing. And that's the tough thing that I, you know, struggle with every day, is like, look, education's the most important thing in the world. Why are we not getting back to basics in it? And I think we can get there at some point. I think the one thing that this election has done is kind of made everybody, both sides, look in the mirror and say, something's broke. The country this big, this wealthy, is divided right down the middle. We have to do a reset. And I think education is one of the biggest platforms that needs to be, you know, revisited and revamped.
Yeah. I mean, it's the, like, young people are always the ones that will spark a, you know, big change, but we're just doing them a disservice by not, you know, they got first 17 years of their life to really absorb a lot, grow a lot, you know, learn a lot, and we're not providing them with the opportunities to do that as good as we can. And you could start by just paying teachers more. You know, my mom she's a really smart woman, and she had a great education. She went to Harvard. She could have done a lot of things. She decided to be a public school teacher. Not a lot of people are doing that.
Well, that was a passion, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about, and I agree 100%. You think about teachers, and again, my day job representing working people. You know, our goal all the time when negotiating contracts is to make certain that we negotiate the best, highest wages, best possible benefits, best conditions, because we believe that people deserve them, number one, but there's nothing better than someone that feels appreciated working under a collective bargaining and getting the wages and benefits they deserve, that they're going to perform the job that much more, right? That much more effective and efficient and be happy. And we deal with the school systems all the time. I mean, you think about the first 17 years of life you brought up. That education is so influential and valuable. And we fight on another front where we represent over 100,000 bus drivers nationwide that transport the kids from age 5 till, you know, senior in high school. And those are the most precious commodities you could be transporting. And you wouldn't believe the fights and the greed that we have to deal with a lot of these bus companies, where they don't want to pay benefits, they don't want to pay wages. And those are the people that are delivering to the teachers that they still want to take advantage of and not pay them. So it's a battle that starts at the bottom and you know, just progresses.
And it's not that much money.
Oh.
In the big picture, it's not. When you think about how important it is, it's so short-sighted to be penny pinching in that area. You know, it's really stupid. I remember someone asked me to go to the State Department in Massachusetts and lobby for some bills coming up. And,
hopefully there's a movie tax incentive so we can bring a lot of that movie work back to Mass.
There's that. That's permanent, isn't
That's
it?
permanent. You
Yeah.
know who did that?
You did it.
We did it. Teamsters with Charlie Baker
Nice job.
on his way out.
That's a really big deal. We were all super happy to hear about that. And people like me who had wanted to go shoot all the movies back there, love working there. And you're always being forced into, Toronto or Atlanta, this and that. When that happened, that was a big deal. I was really glad that happened. But I was there doing something else, and I had to go have a look at the Farm Bill. I don't know if you ever looked at that thing. It's like 9,000 pages of this pork and different weird things in there. And one of them was, now, I don't know what, this was some years ago, but there was about a 14% profit margin for some of these insurance companies. That's a lot of money at the end of the day. It is a lot of money. That kind of money, if there was someone who could leverage that, get that kind of dough into education, you would see in one 12-year stretch, kids go from a whole completely different education system. With this country being a lot better.
Think about if you took those profits, and the insurance companies, they're a disaster right now. I mean, that's corporate greed at its best when you look at insurance companies, healthcare insurance, everything else. But think about if you took those profits and made minimal investments in housing and education. Yeah. I mean, you'd be killing two birds with one stone.
And it's not just like, where's our industry? What industries are we going to have in this country in 15, 20 years? It's also just like things like culturally, like conflict resolution. What are these kids taught? How do you solve problems when it's like that kind of stuff. If you have teachers who are making more money, who have more time to do trainings and other things, they're going to be teaching our kids all kind of stuff. It's not just we need the best inventors to make the best microchips so we can stay in the race with China or whatever.
I think trade schools are a great investment.
Yeah.
Because we're going to need carpenters, we're going to need electricians, we're going to need plumbers. My son went to a 4-year trade school. He's in the plumbers union, 23 years old, journeyman. Most important thing, he's off my payroll, right? Because he's earning his own money. But, he didn't want to go to college. He didn't want to, and he was a good student. He wanted to go to work. He wanted to learn a trade. And I think we've got to stop pushing that narrative a little bit more.
I'm just curious, what is Dad's payroll? What's Dad breaking off over there? Because I have a feeling it might be below minimum wage.
B?
Yeah.
100%. You know what? There's a reason why I like you. People don't know this. We're one of the largest international unions in the country. And I'm the lowest paid general president, which I'm grateful for. This is a dream come true for me. And, my passion is representing working people. But, the next generation, like my kids and your kids, I'm worried. I'm worried about them. I'm worried about, technology. I'm worried about jobs being replaced by AI, which, we'll talk about hopefully a little bit later when the strike between the writers and then the screen actors. A lot of that strike and a lot of those disputes were over technology. And, that's where I struggle as a parent of a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old. You must feel the same way about a lot of that stuff.
Worrying about what kind of work they're going to have in the future, kind of life they're going to make for themselves. Yeah, I do. I got a 20-year-old, and he did a year of school. He's a very bright kid, and I think he's sort of wondering, what can I do? What am I going to do in this world? And sometimes I think the same thing. I think, okay, well, like this acting thing, every time you finish a job, you're unemployed. And you're like, I could probably, like, how much longer can I stretch this out? And are there other things that I might want to do? What would they be? And it gets harder and harder to see, like, what are those careers out there? What are useful things that you can do for the world? And what also are you any good at? Do you have any idea how to do?
So even at your success, right? And obviously you've had a great career. And I don't think people realize the struggle that you make a great point. You make a movie, 18 weeks, 15 weeks, whatever it is. And then you got to look for that next project. So you may go a period of time where a project doesn't fit for you. You're not getting paid that whole time, right? So It's not as glamorous and as, consistent as people think it is.
Definitely not. I'm not going to complain about what's hard about being an actor because I feel so lucky to have been able to just do something that I like doing. That wasn't true for my dad. It wasn't true for, a lot of people. But you go, and as you get older, like you work less. And There's nothing you can do about it. You can't say, okay, you're a musician, you go home and just make music. I have to bring people together and get people to agree to spend some money on a movie and make the movie. Now, things are changing such that you can make a movie at home on your laptop and your iPhone. I mean, that's possible.
We're still going to require teams to be on set, though.
You aren't kidding. Well, that's true. And but no, the thing about AI is that it seems like, I wish that the response from the community had been, it's inevitable that jobs are changing. Some jobs will be lost. But why don't we start to learn how to use these tools, all of us together, because pretending that they don't exist isn't going to work.
Or pretending that jobs aren't going to be lost.
Yeah.
In my day job, we represent one of the largest companies in the world, UPS, where we have 340,000 members. And we negotiated a record-setting contract, and one of the biggest issues was protecting against automation and artificial intelligence, but also recognizing that it is going to come, but we do need a mechanism to create jobs as a result of this technology. And there is opportunity out there. Is that same opportunity exist if you're a screenwriter or if you're a actor and you could be replaced?
Right now it does. I mean, right now it doesn't. And because all of those systems require some human to interact with them to say, here's an idea, put it into ChatGPT or whatever, and get a script back, and then decide if it's good or not good. It still needs people. There are people sitting at a computer and making a movie from scratch themselves, alone in a room. All the picture, all the sound, everything is done all on that computer. And those are going to end up on the internet, whether people like it or not. And people are going to watch them. And people that don't care about, well, we didn't have a Teamster on set. We didn't have, we didn't have any, there were no grips or no gaffers. These, special effects people weren't working. They're just going to watch it. And then it's going to be viral. And then people are going to advertise on it. And it's going to be a whole separate entertainment system that is monetized for the person sitting at home making that AI movie on their computer on their own. There's no stopping that. It's not going to happen overnight, but it surely is coming. And
well, I think the Hollywood that we knew, and look, you and I have kind of come from the same area. We're both childhood actors, as I told you, right? But my father was a transportation coordinator for Teamsters Local 25. He passed away on the set of RIPD in 2012. 50-year Teamster, but he did the motion pictures. My brother's a transportation coordinator in the Teamsters, working on movies. And I worked here and there on certain movies. I worked on House Sitters, and I did a couple of days on School Ties when I was 18 years old. And then I worked on Blown Away. I worked on Malice. I would get laid off and I'd jump on a movie. But it's a completely different business. And I negotiated the majority of the motion picture contracts in Local 25 up until about 2018-19. So I'm very familiar with the industry, but the industry, as how I knew it, has completely changed. I mean, when we would do a movie or there'd be a movie done in Boston, you always talked about a budget. And, most of the movies that were shot in Boston prior to, 2005 always went over budget, not a big deal, whatever it was. But then you get corporate America involved, you get private equity involved. It's no longer, about creativity and, the art of it, making a movie and the artistic point of it. Again, from my perspective, it's about bottom line of a balance sheet and how fast we can do it with the least amount of people. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, mostly. Not that it's just to nitpick the analysis, but I think that when the streamers came in, there's another wrinkle, which was that they don't even care that much about the bottom line. What they care about is the movie being an advertisement. It's just an advertisement for a shipping company, Amazon. It's just an advertisement for a phone company, Apple, or it's just, what I mean? Like
right.
The whole movie itself is kind of a commercial. So what they really care about is buying those big names, not me, but like sort of big movie stars, and having them on their affiliate. It's just somehow.
If anyone says you're not a big movie star, I'm going to have a problem with them. I think you're a huge movie star, especially if you're from Boston.
Thank you, brother. But In Apple, you know, you go into the store and you'll see the people that are actors that are in their shows, and that's what they care about. If the movie doesn't even make necessarily break even, it's not that big of a
There's
deal.
a residual value as a result of the advertisement portion of it.
Right.
That wasn't there prior, right? So just roll back a little bit. You're 18 years old. You know, you decide this is what you want to do. You roll out to LA. What is that like?
You know, I had come here once. My dad ended up in this rehab facility, one of these, like, you know, you got to out in the desert. I don't know why it was California, but it's kind of one of those places where you stay for, like, you know, it's state mandated, or you know, you got to stay for a while. It's not not a sort of cushy check in, check out rehab. So he was here for a while, and so I came out as a teenager, my first time to California, just to visit him, and I was probably 15. And it was way out in the middle of the desert. It was in Indio, which at the time was not a great place. And I kind of thought, like, this is not a place that I want to end up, you know. And then I went back home, and I fell in love with acting, you know. So I thought I was doing theater all the time, and I liked it, and that became part of my identity. So my mom was disappointed, but I didn't go to college, and I went out to, I got a car with my best friend. We drove across the country, ended up in LA, in a place called Eagle Rock. And it couldn't be more different than Boston. I mean, it's 3,000 miles away, and I hadn't really seen most of the country. You know, I was just in the city. I mean, we would only go, there we are on the East Coast. I went to the beach like 1 week a year when we see our grandparents out in Cape Cod. So there was no, like, we basically just stayed in Central Square or whatever.
You know you've been to Revere Beach.
Don't run from that.
I could have gone to Revere Beach. I turned it down.
Vacation destination.
Yeah. I worked with this guy. I worked at Fenway Park. This guy ran a sausage stand, and he would...
The Sausage King?
It wasn't the sausage. It was the Daily. It was the Don Daily, Double D sausage, it was called. And he was also the security guard at my high school, which, as far, there was no security happening. I don't know. I only ever saw the dude in the men's locker room. And
That's strange.
yeah, that's the security would hang out. And there's I remember there's a table there, and a bunch of them just sitting there.
Look, this is a podcast, not confession.
Anyway, he had this sausage stand at Fenway, and he hired, you know, kids to come work there. So I'm in 8th grade. I'm out there like
14 years old.
13. I'm going like, you know, selling these sausages. They're all disgusting, and making a lot of, you know, make for me a lot of money. You walk with $80 at the end of the night. So you have to go prepare, and then the game ends, and everyone comes out and they're drunk and they buy sausages. And then the guy around the stand would go into Cask and Flagon, which is his famous
Right in the
bar.
corner,
Yeah.
yep.
And back then,
I think I've been there once or twice.
oh yeah, I'm sure. I think I remember you. You were 13 too.
Yeah, but I had a fake ID.
Anyway, he'd bring us in there, and then we have to wait a couple hours. And then, you know, it's midnight, right? On school night, like a Wednesday game, you know, and then he would always try to drag us out to Revere Beach to go to
Kelly's roast beef,
to go to roast beef. Hammered, you know what I mean? Getting his like Camaro. And I was like, nah, I'm fine, dude. I'm okay. I'll walk back home. So no, I avoided
That's
Revere
good.
Beach.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, you know, we travel around the country, obviously, and there's this Boston air about us, you know, and people all around the country will be like, you Boston guys are something else, because I think we do have a certain way about us. And I know you went out to LA, your brother was out there, Matt Damon was out there, and I assume some other Boston people. Like, did you get that same feeling, like people were like horrified, or they couldn't figure you out, or they didn't know what was going to come out of your mouth? What was it like dealing with some of these people out here that have never been exposed to, number one, the attitude? Because look, we have an attitude. There's no doubt. Boston people, we own it. We're very direct. How did that help you or hurt you in the business coming out here? And what was the reaction of people?
It is a part of who we are, you know, so fuck them, you know, but, there was a learning curve, you know, that if you're a little bit sarcastic, it doesn't always land. And you have to explain, like, or if you could be people don't usually tease each other. I didn't know that. I didn't know that like a way of.
We are the best at that, aren't we?
Yeah. But like, not everyone in the world says I love you by like insulting you. You know what I mean? You look stupid today, bro. It's like
when you say to someone you look stupid, you mean, hey, wow, you look good, man.
Yeah. I wish I had that thing I'm wearing.
And the one thing that we're good at is we're at our best a lot of times when people are at their worst and we don't realize it. And but it's different. But that must have been a little tough adjustment.
I guess so. I don't know. It was also, made me feel like it was a part of my identity. Like that, coming from Cambridge has always been a part of my identity that I like. And sometimes when people go like, "Where are you from?" I'm proud of it. You know what I mean? Whatever the reason is that they're asking that, it's usually something I like about myself.
I love saying, especially, coming from where we come from, and you've had great success in your career. And I've had some success on what I do, but there's no better time when people say, "Where are you from?" I say, "Boston, Mass."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, we can tell." But it's proud. And, Hollywood, I mean, you think about who's out there from Boston and Cambridge. I mean, you've got yourself, you've got Matt Damon, you've got your brother, you've got Mark Wahlberg, Jonathan Tucker, you've got Max Casella.
Max went to my high school.
Yeah, Max went to your high school. Tracy Bingham.
Yeah, went to your
high school. Yeah. And so, I mean, you've got that whole
all those people older than me.
Right. But did you hang around with a lot of those folks or not? Because I talked to Jonathan Tucker a lot. And I said, "Oh, did you ever see Wahlberg?" Because I'm friends with Mark Wahlberg. He goes, "No, I never met him." And I'm like, how did you not meet him? Have you ever met, the Afflecks? Is there like a Boston connection or really not out there?
Yeah, I think so. It doesn't mean that you're going to end up talking to everybody else that happens to be working, but there's a lot of people out here that aren't like famous or something. And there's a connection. People go like, "Oh, you're from Boston." And usually it sparks a conversation and usually a conversation is friendly. And so, I'm not sure why so many people wound up out here working from Massachusetts. It might just be that we find each other. And if we happen to be from Jersey, we'd say like, "Oh, geez, a lot of Jersey people out here," and it might be that LA is a place where people come to from other places. I'm more surprised when I meet people and say, "Where are you from?" and they say LA. I'm like, wow, people grow up in LA, and then I had kids and I raised them here,
Now they say they're from LA.
Now they say they're from LA. Yeah. And, a lot, Max Casella and Tracy, they all had that teacher that you were asking about. And I think he, inspired a lot of people. I don't know if we all would have wound up doing this if it wasn't because of him. And it just goes to show you like what one good teacher the difference that they can make in a kid's life is give them something that they feel like they're good at, give them the tools to be good at it. So that other people don't say, "Ah, you suck," give them, and make them like it, and that's really special. So, yeah, I mean, because Matt was no good. Without Jerry Specca, Matt wouldn't have a career.
Did you often remind Matt of that?
He knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny story, when they were shooting School Ties,
yeah,
I got a scholarship to play football at University of New Haven. And then I ended up playing a semester at UMass. I was in the union working because we were doing the theaters, the Boston Garden. Got my Class 1 license to drive a truck. And I knew all I wanted to ever do was drive a truck. I wanted to be a Teamster because I was brought up around it 4 generations. So my guidance counselor in high school was a guy named Dick Fusco. Great guy, played for the Giants in like the 50s and 60s. And when he found out that I left school, stopped playing football, he called me up and he said, "You had a great opportunity. You blew it. Why did you do that?" I'm like, "Look, I want to be in the union. I want to work and I want to buy a couple houses by the time I'm 21 years old." I had some goals like that. And he said, "Listen, no one's ever going to pay you to stand around and do nothing." Okay. So 6 months later, I get laid off. I'm in an apprenticeship as a rigger in Local 25. I get laid off. So I get the opportunity to go work on house sitters. They're in the same location for 10 weeks. Right? School Ties is being shot at the same time. So I'm driving a prop trailer, 18, 19 years old. I never knew what my father did. Like I just knew he worked in the movies, whatever. So I drive the truck to the set, park it. I'm like, "All right, what do you want me to do?" He goes, "Well, we're going to be here for 8 weeks." So I was there for 8 weeks. Absolutely didn't do a thing. I called Mr. Fusco up, and we make great money. You know, Teamsters make great money, and that's not the norm. You know how movies work. You're working. Our Teamsters are working, moving stuff all day long. But I just happened to get on this set where we didn't move for 8 weeks. I call him up and I said, "Hey, Mr. Fusco, you're not going to believe it. Remember the time you told me no one would ever pay me to stand around and do nothing?" I go, "I get this gig." And I tell him all about it. You know what he says? "Can you get me on?" So that was my first experience in Hollywood working as a Teamster.
You're going to make a bad impression of people who don't know.
No, they work. Listen.
They're like, so these guys do nothing.
No,
right?
our Teamsters work very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, they're long 16, 17-hour jobs. They're moving sets. They're away from their families.
Yeah.
You know, and then you get into the, you know, like Hollywood, like you. I mean, you got to travel all the time. You talk about work, life, family balance. You know, that scenario I just described it's not the norm. Mm-hmm. And, but, you know, it's an industry that's, you know, it's provided a lot of opportunity, a lot of living for people.
Can I ask you a favor?
Sure.
Is it possible to get the guys to just not idle, just turn things off when they're sitting there? I know everyone wants to listen to the radio.
That's a heavy lift. That's a heavy lift.
There's got to be a rule about that, right?
All right, I'll tell you what. We'll do that, but probably going to be a little more in the envelope to do that. No, I'm only kidding. I think the industry is going to a green. I mean, I know a lot of the trailers out there now and stuff, and the trucks are all clean energy. They're, you know, most of them are, I think, solar powered now, so there's not generators running. So I think the industry,
trailers are solar powered?
I think in some cases they are. I know in California they are, and you know, a lot of those same operators operate all over the country. So I think you're going to see that dwindle down quite a bit.
That'd be nice. I did this movie called The Finest Hours in Massachusetts, and a big Disney movie, and we were outside all the time. True story about this oil tanker that split in half after the war. You know, all these tankers were made so cheap they thought the German subs were going to sink them, so they just made them really cheaply. And then you know, we got on top of the situation and we won the war, and then a lot of these old cheap tankers came back undestroyed, and they were used as just commercially. But they weren't made that well. One of them's in this big storm in the 50s, and off the Cape, splits in half. Front half of the ship sinks. The back half is just floating because it's full of oil, which is lighter than water. So it's just floating there. All the officer, all the captain, and everybody else dies in the front. So it's all the guys that are just working in the like engine room that don't know what to do and can't steer the ship, and they're got to figure out how to survive. Great, beautiful story about the Coast Guard. Massachusetts comes out in the storm, rescues him.
I negotiated that contract.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was probably what, 2010 or 11? No.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
And later than that, 15 maybe.
Yeah.
2015.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe this was a part of the deal. Maybe this is why everything happened this way. The contract that you negotiated. Let's see. We're freezing cold out there. The guys are we're on the water, sopping wet. You know, from the minute we show up until the minute we leave, because it's just a movie about a rainstorm in December at sea, and it's uncomfortable to say the least. So when you've been soaking wet and it's 30 degrees, and your body temperature is that low, and your hands are turning blue and your lips are blue and you can't stop shivering, and you come back to your trailer, you'd think that someone might have turned the heat on, or that bothered to have the generator on so that you could turn the heat on. And then just say, I come back, I understand there's a lot going on in a movie set. I would say, John, next time, can you I got to have the heat on because it takes 20 minutes to warm up. You know what I mean? I'm dying here. And, every single time, oh, you want the Jenny on? I said, you can just imagine that when I come back sopping wet, on the verge of hypothermia, I'm going to want the Jenny on every day. So that's not a gas saving thing, because the rest of the cars are idling. All the cars that have guys in them, they're just sitting there idling.
Do you know that Teamsters deliver fuel as well, right? So that's funny. But you got to admit, we are the best in the business, the Teamsters.
The very best.
So just getting back to the industry, because I think it's important. You've had a long career. I mean, 30 years, right? And it's like peaks and valleys. You hit a home run on a movie, and then you might do a couple more movies that don't do so well, and then you hit another home run. And the one thing that I learned in my position that's been difficult, not so much when I was on the local level, but when you're on a national platform, and I noticed, I read some stuff that, people are very critical of whatever we do, right? Especially when you have a national presence. And the hardest thing for me is when we get into a situation and, you think it's the right thing to do and you're doing everything you want to do on behalf of the best interest of your members, and then you're criticized in the media, you're criticized on social media. Very difficult at first for me to not get pissed off about when I'm reading, and I'm reading these quotes and someone's bad-mouthing like, hey, fuck you, man. I just saved, 400 jobs. We negotiated the strongest contracts, yet you want to criticize me over something. How is that in Hollywood? Is that difficult to deal with? Because, you've got people that are criticizing everything you do. Every movie that is made, they criticize an actor, they criticize a director, they criticize a writing, they criticize a scenery. How do you deal with that?
I guess I have to credit like my mom and dad or something. I got a pretty thick skin, and it just doesn't bother me that much. I mean, sometimes people will say things that are very personal, or I will read things and I think, if my kids saw that, it would probably hurt them. No matter what you tell them, when you see something on the computer, online, something public, someone saying something bad about your dad, it hurts. I know it's embarrassing, or it hurts their feelings, or it's confusing to them, and that will makes me angry.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Look, you say whatever you want about me, but you want to say something that's not true. You want to try and disparage me in front of my kids or say something about my family. Yeah. Family's off limits as far as I'm concerned. You want to attack me, have at it. Like you, I have thick skin, and that'll motivate us to actually act better and also perform better at our jobs. But it's difficult, especially now where there's such a platform of social media and opinions in this society where people can say whatever they want regardless of consequences. It's tough.
It's tough. I don't care about what movie critics, if they say something mean about me or they don't like my performance. I'm out there like willing to do publicly something that I believe in, that I really like, put my heart into it, and succeed or fail in a very vulnerable and exposed way. And I do it over and over again. A critic is just sitting there saying, well, that sucks.
Right.
What are they doing? To what are they making or contributing? Or now I've seen people write about movies. I've read some reviews I think are very smart, and I like reading when a film critic or an essayist or whatever they write stuff that makes me see these movies and understand performances in a new and better way, and I appreciate that as an art form unto itself. It's but 95% of it is just trying to. It's not journalism, and it's not an art form. It's entertainment. It's just advertising, that kind of entertainment news, gossip news. They're writing headlines and they're crafting their story to get clicks and to maximize the advertising dollars for whoever's paying them. And if you're doing that at the expense of somebody else's personal life, I would have to ask those people, like, what do you tell your kids you do for a living? You expose and make fun of people and slander people so that whoever's paying you can make a few more bucks.
But the problem with that is when you react to these people, you're actually accomplishing what they want. They want a reaction. They want you to get pissed off. The one thing that, I look at when I'm doing my job, and or if there's any, I like constructive criticism. I like reading something that's constructive coming from people that actually have credibility. I don't mind that at all. And the tough part for me to swallow a lot of times is when people don't have the credibility. To your point, they just want to be antagonistic and they want to tear you down. That's where, there's that fine line between, what upsets you and what doesn't upset you. Yeah. And I think, it's just the way of the world and we've got to adjust. But getting back to the business and the most recent situations that have happened. We had the pandemic, right, which hurt the business because shut down filming in a lot of areas, shut down the industry, and then there was a little bit of a boom when they reopened because there was a potential for the writers' strike and then the SAG strike. So there was a push on to get as much content made. How did that affect the strike, affect the business today?
I don't know.
I mean, did you see the strike was a positive? It definitely was positive for the workers and the actors and the screenwriters, but did it have a negative impact on the business moving forward? I know that, Teamsters, we have about 20,000 members that depend upon making a living here, and we supported that strike because we've got the ability not to cross picket lines and everything else. And it was a little devastating to some people because there was no work out there. And, we created relief and funds. People lost their homes, cars repossessed. And, every strike has a negative consequence, hopeful for, the positive at the end. And I think, knowing as much as I know about what happened on there, I think there was a lot of protections put in there for the writers. It's like anything else. You read the pros and cons of any agreement with the SAG. What is your opinion on that?
I mean, I'm a big believer in unions. I support them. I've seen firsthand the difference it makes in people's lives, and that's not just the movies. And I don't really think they went far enough. I think that they got sort of bullied a little bit in the end of the day. Like, I'm not really sure that most people aren't going to see a difference, in the kind of contract they're getting and the sort of money that they're making. You pick just your average like actor or screenwriter before and after, and it's not going to make a big difference. And I think there was an opportunity. There was a lot of support for culturally and within even just in LA for to change things, change how things are done. The power structure has got wildly out of whack, and these movie executives who many of my friends, people I've known for years, but they sit in their offices and they make a fortune, and they're not making those movies. And obviously above them are these people that own these gigantic companies.
Global economies in some respects, like the Amazons and the Netflix.
Yeah. And at the very bottom are the people that are like trying to write this stuff that people love and trying to perform the stuff that people love. And there are some celebrities that make a fortune. And I know of some of them. I'm related to some of them. They make a lot of money. They're set. They're good.
Right, but that's not the majority. That's not the majority. And
that's the 1%.
I think that's the one thing that I took out of that strike was that, for a whole, decades upon decades, people viewed anybody that was an actor that they were millionaires, right? That they were making all kinds of money. But I think the one thing that was clear this time around was the voices that were out there when people were striking saying, I don't make $40,000 a year doing this. I don't have health insurance. Yeah. I don't have a retirement. So I think the reality of the industry was exposed to a certain extent. Not everybody's a millionaire.
But it didn't change a lot.
Right.
It didn't change enough. And as there's now, as you point out, there's the artificial intelligence change that's kind of looming, and that's scary to writers and actors alike. It just starts to feel like an industry where it's almost impossible to make. It's like winning the lottery to make a good living, and that's too bad. I remember not so long ago, 90s, early 90s, when the industry was kind of booming. You could come out and get a few jobs over the course of a year, and you could make your year's nut. You could have an apartment, you have your car, you could do. I think those days are over.
Well, I'll tell you, growing up, and we didn't grow up, as affluent as everybody else did. But I remember, Boston wasn't a Hollywood mecca, and I remember my father would say, "All right, there's a movie coming to Vermont. I'm going to be away all summer. This is great. This will get us through. Yeah. This will get us through Christmas." And, that reality is not just for actors, it's for everybody that depends upon, there was always hope. There was a lot of speculation. Hopefully we get this movie, and we'll be able to pay tuition next month. And I think even back then, not much has changed now, right? Because it's not the continuous business that it was. You have other opportunities where people are going overseas where it's cheaper labor to do these films. So it's tough and trying times, I think, and people don't realize that.
Yeah, and it's not fair. You know, if you just laid bare all this everyone's salaries involved in one movie from top to bottom, you would see it would be astonishing. People would be upset. You know, it's not fair that some studio executives making $8 million a year, and they're not working any harder or are more talented than the folks that are lugging around the equipment day after day, jumping from one job to the next. It's just gotten that way, you know, and it's hard to like restructure everything.
Yeah, it's definitely not a loyal business, you know, where, you know, they don't value, in my opinion, they don't value the talent. They don't value the crew. What now the focus is on how much money we can make and how short a period of time can happen. And I don't know how we change that culture. But I think, you know, having strikes, having people stand up and fight, I think that's a great thing. I think that was a great opportunity. And if it was a missed opportunity, well, you know what? We're going to get another opportunity at it. Or they should get another opportunity at it. Let's talk about the fires right now. I mean, you are pretty well tired right now because you've been out for 2 days and you've been out there working hard, volunteering, setting up shelters. What impact is that going to have not only on the industry, but also the communities?
Well, let's just be clear. I mean, I just show up and say, like, how can I help? And, you know, I bring my kids and their friends out who are older and see if we can, like, lend a hand at the beginning. But there are these organizations and all the people that work there that are really, you know, doing all the work while we're sitting here. They're over there with their masks on, and the air is super bad. And they're, you know, you're out there for 10 minutes, you got a pounding headache. It's no fun. And those organizations, it's awesome to see them work, man. Whether it's there's CERT, there's CORE, which is Sean Penn's thing. There's the Red Cross, of course. There's all, and they just immediately show up, you know, when there's a crisis like that. And it's really heartening. It's impressive, but it's also like, it's kind of moving. They're there setting up, knowing that, you know, before there's the need, knowing that the need is coming. They're in the convention center clearing out or just bringing in food's coming in. I don't know where all these donations are coming from. It shows up right away. It's pretty awesome. It was a beautiful response. And then suddenly all these evacuated families and people that lost all their houses in like a blink of an eye, everything was gone. They're wandering into this makeshift shelter, dazed and starting over completely and just looking for a cot. And, you know, some families and kids, and that's traumatic. You know, it is.
It's extremely traumatic. Yeah. And there's nothing better than a community coming together in light of this terrible fires that are going on. There was a lot of criticism as well with the elected officials. Mm-hmm. You know, we've been following this, and we read that, you know, the mayor had some criticism because she took a trip to Africa. Governor Newsom's been criticized. The criticisms have been about leadership and also lack of infrastructure to support battling these fires, and also a budget that saw the fire department budget get cut.
Yeah.
How is that impacted, and what are you hearing about that?
Honestly, I haven't paid too much attention to the like chatter around, you know, the political chatter and the sort of online social media hubbub about all of it. But what I do see is like all those firefighters and guys from like other states showing up. And man, that looks like a tough job. And if I were younger, I would do it, you know, because it seems it's heroic. It does look heroic, you know, and probably very satisfying because they're right there and they're trying to save people's houses and lives and everything, and they are doing it. I don't know what's been said about the mayor or but I think that, some of that stuff is just people upset and pissed off, and they want to just blame somebody.
Yeah, one of the biggest critics was her opponent that lost. Was criticizing, her, saying she should have never took the trip. Thursday she left. Projections were out there that the winds were going to, speed up and cause this issue. And again, I get, she didn't start the fires. She can't put them out. But the other criticism is the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. We talk about, politicians being very influential. We talk about politics, how important they are, regardless of what side you're on. And when you read something in an article that says, they haven't invested in the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. We got the water infrastructure of a third world nation. That's pretty disturbing, especially with the growth of population. Especially in a traumatic time like this, people are going to capitalize on that. We've seen how politics can influence good and bad in this country. What's the political landscape you see out in California? Do you see it changing from the far left, or do you see it going to the far right, or is there an opportunity to come together in the middle?
I mean, my observations are just kind of based on like what I see in TV and the little bubbles that I'm in. I don't pretend to be an expert or have an opinion that's going to be enlightening for anybody, but I remember that California was a red state. I might be getting this wrong, but I think Clinton turned it blue, mostly on border issues. He wanted to increase border security, which then became more of a Republican issue. Mm-hmm. And it's stayed blue but it's become a little bit, it keeps going, especially like in this last election where almost every demographic was trending to the right a little bit. That's what happened here too. And I see a lot of division, obviously, between, groups. You'll have huge pockets where it was all very Republican. They have very distinctly, one set of beliefs or political opinions. And then you have, you move down into other pockets of the city and it's totally different. But that seems to be the case all over. And I'm not sure what to do about it. But it feels like, the arts, and I'll toot my own horn here, the arts are something that is always good for the country. It's always made people's lives better.
Well, it's always brought people together. I mean, you think about recessions, and we've lived through a few in our age. The one thing that was always constant, you were able to go to the movies.
Yeah.
You were able to watch a movie, right? And movies were always being produced. So that was kind of, an example of the arts bringing people together and giving hope. But, this country has been so divided, and I think it was more evident in this election, or clear in this election. And I know in my day job, I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican or an independent. What I care about is the United States of America, and I care about coming to compromise and making decisions, making legislation, making policy that works for American workers, but also American citizens. And I think there's a way to do that, but there's been such a line drawn in the sand. I mean, think about where you grew up. You grew up in Cambridge, very, very progressive, liberal city. Probably, drove a lot of policies in other cities, towns, and states because of, how progressive and how liberal you were. And I know friends of mine, and I'm a lifelong Democrat, that, have lost faith in the party. And I don't want to lose faith in the party. I want to fix the party, but also want to work with Republicans as well. How do you feel about that?
It seems like the party needs to be fixed. That's for sure. And Cambridge was always has been very progressive. As you say, there were also people, I'm thinking about my childhood street and all the different houses and families. We might have been the only family, like my parents were Democrats, maybe the only ones. So people had different ideas, and it wasn't uniform ideology, and that was great. That's what made that place great. And so even in a very, very progressive place, there is room for all kinds of ideas. The Democratic Party, I mean, I don't know. I think that I don't want to get into it too much, but when they undermined Bernie, I think that was a turning point, and they lost a lot of people.
Look, the one thing that's going to have to happen in this country is we're going to have to work with each other. And you'll always hear me say this. We've got to collaborate to actually effectuate change, right? Mm-hmm. And if we're not working together, who's actually suffering? It's the people that we're paid to represent, whether it's in the union or whether it's political. You know, the one thing I love about you and where you're from and what you do, similar to what I do, is you take care of your friends. You've never forgotten who your friends were, and you work together with your friends. It's important for that. And I think, that's really, really a great characteristic that unless you grew up where we grew up, you don't understand that. And I always tell people, they'll say, what are your friends like? Who do you hang around with? I go, I hang around with the same people that I grew up with my entire life. And they'll joke and laugh. And some, had some troubles in their lives, but we never walked away from them. Some, chose different paths. And, at the end of the day, we still hang around with the same friends that we grew up with. And it's important.
Older I get, that's becomes more clear. That's the relationships are the most important things in your life. And those friendships give me more pleasure than anything else. And they take care of me probably more than I look after them. So,
all right. So what is on the agenda for you moving forward in 2025 and beyond?
I guess I got to find a senator and fight him. I guess if I want to make my mark, No, I don't. I got one more year with my son, my second kid, before he goes off to school, and I want to be around as much as I can for that. That's kind of the most important thing. When my first kid left home, it was way harder than I thought. I felt it was really, and he went far. He went to school in Europe, and it was heartbreaking, man. It's hard when they leave. You're just so bonded, and you never see it coming, and then you're just not around them. It's just like a chemical withdrawal.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we're different parenting the way we grew up. I don't think my father really talked to us till we were about 15 or 16. And here our kids are, we're having full-blown adult conversations with them when they're 8 or 9. and two kids, same parents, same upbringing, in total 2 different personalities. Yeah. My oldest is a nice blue-collar, hardworking kid, and my youngest thinks he's a Kardashian. So it's like, no matter what you do, they're going to be their own people.
Well, good for them.
All right, I got 2 questions for you. 1, favorite sports team in Boston?
Sox.
What about the Bruins? No?
They're not my favorite.
No? All right.
Sorry. You seem disappointed. I mean,
a little bit, but all right.
Double D sausage. Right, I got my loyalties.
I hear you. And Revere Beach, I
did skate with Bobby Orr, though.
Did you?
Yeah, I was a little kid.
How'd you do?
I didn't come anywhere near him, but
It was kind of like me being a childhood actor.
Yeah, exactly. I saw him warming up on the ice, and I have no idea why he was there, and I didn't even recognize him. Someone that's Bobby Orr, and he was just out there on his own. And I had my skates and everything, and I was like, I'm gonna just get out here and wait for someone to tell me I can't.
Did you get those skates at Service Merchandise?
Probably. Yeah.
So one last question.
Yeah.
When Brady left, I know you're a diehard Patriots fan, like we all are. When Brady left, did you become a fan of Tampa Bay?
No. But I remained a fan of Brady and of Gronk. I did root for them. I think it's okay. You can root for a team and have other players that you like,
What is the best movie that you've seen in the last year, besides the one you shot?
I don't watch a lot of movies. I know it sounds weird, but I mean, I spent so many years just watching all of them. And then my youngest has gotten really into movies, so I watch a bunch stuff that he's watching, and he's getting into some of these slightly older ones. But we've gone through a lot of my favorites as I'm showing them to him, and I've revisited movies that I haven't watched in a long time, which are so suddenly I'm watching my 10 favorite all-time movies again, just to show them to him. The Elephant Man, Slapshot, which didn't land as much as I thought it would. I was howling with laughter. They're a little bit bored.
Caddyshack?
Like a pacing thing. Not Caddyshack.
No.
What was the other one? Moneyball.
Yep.
This year I really liked A Complete Unknown.
And we were talking earlier, there's just so many movies out there. There's so much content out there with streaming media and series and all this stuff. It's hard to take
You have
keep up
to
with all
change.
this
You have to
stuff.
change your attitude about it. It's like,
You have to be unemployed to keep up.
yeah, or it's like going to the bookstore. You don't watch in and go, "Oh my God, there's so many books, I can't read them all." You just go find the one you want, and you get that. It's like that. You turn on the TV, you see thousands of movies. You're like, I don't know any of these people. I never heard of these. I'm not going to try to watch all of them. But yeah, like this year of the new movies that I saw, I really liked Complete Unknown. I just thought it was good performances and stuff. I know it's. I think Chalamet did a really great job. He's a good actor.
So my all-time favorite movie with you was when you were Christian Bale.
Yeah.
Into the Furnace.
Out
Out
of
of
the
the Furnace,
Furnace, yeah.
yes. Great movie.
Nice.
I loved it. Woody Harrelson, he played a great character.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too far-fetched what was going on at the time. People coming back from war, PTSD, not sure where they wanted to go in their life.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies.
That guy who made that, Scott Cooper, is doing. He's making the one about Bruce Springsteen right now, and Scott's a good friend of mine. We met on that movie, became very close, and he said, "I'm going to go see Bruce play in Spain. It's over the summer. You want to come?" I was like, "Oh hell yeah, I want to go." So. Because they were getting to know each other and getting ready to make this movie about Bruce's. The movie is about him recording Nebraska, I think. And so I went over there and got to hang out with Bruce.
How good was that?
To Bruce fucking Springsteen.
That's unbelievable.
It was incredible. And he played a 3-hour show in the old Olympic Stadium in Barcelona. And it was packed. I must have been 60, 70,000 people. And they knew every single word of every song. And then afterward, I asked him, I said, "What?" I said, that you're huge, man. I mean, these people, they know every word of songs I didn't even remember. And, this is their second language. And he said it's been like that in Spain. It's very, very popular. And apparently he gets more people going to the shows when he does these like European tours than he does in the States. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but he was, I don't know, he's 70 something.
It's unbelievable. It's amazing.
He played a 3-hour show without a single break. I didn't see him stop to drink water. An incredible performer, healthy, strong guy, incredible.
Well, if you get a secret, let me know, will you?
Yeah.
Great. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on this show. It's been a great, great conversation, and hope to collaborate with you more in the future.
I'll be happy to come back, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.